Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's exactly 32 minutes past 1. My name is Isaac Sonko, one of the Elite Brothers. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to today's show, the Elite Brothers TV show that is brought to you by Quest TV. You might realize that we are seated a little bit closer to each other, and you might wonder why, but trust you or me, we are fully vaccinated and we understand all the soaps that are in place. Today, we want to discuss something very vital for our community. We've all been hearing about the politics, the issues surrounding the two UCOC committees that are in place in California here. And as leaders and elders of this community, they had thought it wise to have a reconciliation committee to try and bring these two groups together so that as a community we only come up with one body that could represent the interests of all Ugandans living in California. I wouldn't want to preempt what we're going to discuss in today's discussion, but with me today I have two guests. These are my elders in the community, and I'll want to give them a minute each to introduce themselves, who they are and what they do. And I'll start with the gentleman on my left. You're most welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, community members. My name is Moses Wilson. I have been a member of this community since the 1970s and have played a role in one capacity or the other. I was asked to fulfill the position of a moderator, somebody who was in the middle, somebody who was somewhat neutral in the process of reconciliation between the two UCOC administrations. And that is what I'm here today to discuss. Thank you.
Okay, you're most welcome. Mr. Moses Wilson, feel free to speak your mind, and just know that the community out there, we have actually people in America here, in California and outside California listening to this show because it's a live show. But we also have our brothers and sisters from back in Uganda listening and looking at us through our program today. Ladies and gentlemen, on my right, I also want to welcome my elder to say hi in 1 minute and also tell us who he is and what they do.
Good afternoon, viewers. Thank you, Quest TV, for inviting us, and thank you, Mr. Wilson, for accepting the invitation to sit here today. I'm Elijah Okidimpuga, the UCOC Secretary, and I was invited here to discuss, and it's good to discuss the way forward in our community and the issues at hand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Elijah. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to roll the ball now. And I would want to start with Mr. Moses Wilson. Just for the benefit of a person who works 24 hours here in California, probably today they might be seated and watching, but they do not have a history. Can you briefly give us a genesis of UCOC? I think I'm pronouncing it. Is it UCOC?
Uganda Community of California.
Yes. Just briefly in 1 minute, what it is, and then why do we have two, and then you bring us to the reconciliation process. Just try and be brief a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I want to jump forward a little bit. The challenge we have here is that we very possibly could end up with a split in our community that may well never be reconciled. And that is what we want to avoid. Let us remember that UCOC itself is a result of a previous split in the preceding Ugandan organization in LA. UCOC is not the original organization. UCOC is a result of another split similar to the one we have right now. And we have had one other in between that. The original Ugandan community was founded in 1984. I forget the name, but I think it was the Association of Ugandans in Los Angeles. I could be wrong. We met at the home of Mr. Stephen Lubeka in Altadena in 1984. I was one of the original founding members. There were 20 of us, including Mr. James Nagenda, Mr. Bede Sensalo, Mr. Benon Mukasa, and others. What is of interest is, of the original founders of that organization, I believe I'm the only one who's still active. All the others have become disenfranchised and left. That is not what we want. That organization was the one that hosted the UNA Convention in 1994, not UCOC, that original organization. Subsequent to that, there were divisions similar to the one we're facing right now that arose. Different people in leadership. Eventually there were two organizations, and then one broke off permanently. And that was the one that was led by Mr. Frank Musisi and became UCOC. In so doing, members abandoned the original UCOC because they were older leaders. And they said, well, if that's what they want, we don't want to play a part in this community anymore. And they left. So UCOC then was founded at that point, somewhere towards the late of 1990, maybe as late as early 2000s. So you can see where those divisions are. When something like that happens, there is a group that becomes disenfranchised and leaves. And that is what we don't want to happen. Now, in 2007, 2008, we had a leader who personalized UCOC. And a group of us, and I was amongst of those, was disenfranchised. In fact, I personally was prepared to take him to court over that matter. And we had decided to break away from UCOC and start a completely new organization. We met, we had funded it, we had about 100 supporters. Then I was elected president of UNA. And I've suddenly found myself in a dilemma. I cannot lead a rebel group, shall we say. I cannot lead, I cannot condone this, the separation of the community. So I was able to convince the group that was trying to break away, let us see what we can do with UCOC. Let us see if we can reconcile. And using my position as a UNA president, there were some who did not like it and moved away. But this bottom line is, UC remained one. We now have issues where, again, there are divisions. There are members of the community who say, well, no, this is not what we think the organization is supposed to do. And there are technicalities with the Constitution, yes, but we have two distinct groups, both of whom believe they are the legitimate leaders of UCOC. And this has happened in the last 2 years. I was invited maybe 3 months ago to try and come up with some way of compromise, of reconciling these two organizations so that we don't ultimately end up with two organizations and go through what we have gone through before. Let us also know that in a couple of other Ugandan communities, and I'll bring one in particular, the one in Chicago, this process of reconciliation failed. And they now have two organizations in those communities. The downside to that is the members of one community do not recognize the members of the other. So if there is a wedding, a death, or whatever in one community, you'll find that members of the other community do not participate. You live in the same community, but you operate as two alien entities. That is what we do not want to happen in UCOC. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'm actually still with you now. Moving fast forward, you're brought on board as a chairman reconciliation committee. What were your responsibilities? What exactly did you do with the committee? What failed you? Do you have a report in place? Can you just give us, in a minute again, a nutshell of whatever you guys did?
It's a little bit more complicated than that.
Okay.
Last year, when COVID started, I took the initiative to talk to community members, all the church leaders, all the religious leaders, the leaders of the Muslim community, the Catholic community, all the 5 Christian churches that we have, And I said, let us put our differences aside, create an entity to help any one of our members who may come down with COVID or who may have suffered from COVID one way or the other. And they said, that's a good idea. I talked to the Haruna administration and I talked to the Susan administration personally. And I said, look, we have to leave our differences. We've got to leave our differences. Community is community. And they all agreed. So we created this committee, we funded it, and have been helping members of our community as this group without political bias. In the process, I was talking to both President Susan and President Haruna whenever things came up and saying, look, let's not politicize this process. And it was working well. Then maybe 3 or 4 months ago, President Haruna said, Mr. Wilson, seeing as you have this thing going, is there a possibility that we can expand it and make it a reconciliation process? Soon thereafter, he sent me a message and said, I want to form a reconciliation committee, and these are the names I'm proposing for this committee, and I want you to chair it. I immediately went to him and I said, I cannot be part of this reconciliation committee, because a reconciliation committee that is created by one group will not be accepted by another group. So please leave me out. Mr. Kabuye asked to meet with me, face to face. And we did. And I told him, what I need to do at this particular point is, I cannot be part of the reconciliation committee. It's something that has to grow so that both sides feel that they're part of the process. Yes, you're on board, but we don't know if Susan is on board. Let me talk to Susan personally and see what she thinks. I walked out of the room, went downstairs to my car. I called Susan right then and then and I said, Susan, this has been proposed. What do you think? And she said, great idea. I'm on board. Let's see what we can do. I immediately went back to the people in the meeting, to Haruna, and I said, okay, Susan is on board. Let us now negotiate first at this level, president to president, and then we'll bring in their administrations, and then we'll expand it. And so that process grew slowly. First, once we made proposals that they seemed to say, yeah, okay, well, we think we can live with that as the two presidents. We took those proposals to their administrations, their vice president, their treasurer, their secretaries, and that was the responsibility of each president. Mr. Haruna took it to his administration, President Susan took it to her administration. That wasn't my responsibility. But in talking to both of them, and engaging both of them, and starting to engage other members of their administration, it appeared we had an understanding. And I said, okay, what we're now going to do is I'm going to involve other members of the community, not the reconciliation committee, but other members. So I invited all the people who were on the COVID group, because they represented all of the churches, and they represented both organizations. And I said, in a meeting, what are we going to do? And they said, I gave them a report, and they said, okay, you have told us what you're saying. We think it's a good idea. It is time now to engage both administrations one-on-one. So I called a meeting, and I called the meeting thinking we had an understanding in place. However, at that meeting, and I invited both administrations, however, in that meeting, other people who had not actually been directly invited by me also participated. They were invited by the different administrations, their own supporters, to give their opinions, which I was a bit surprised, but I did not object to it, and they came into the meeting. During that meeting, I actually thought we were purely formalizing an understanding. Turns out that's not what happened. Some of the people who I thought I'd engaged, some of the people who I thought I had received commitments from, said, no, you know what, yeah, we've talked to Mr. Wilson, but turns out we didn't understand what he was saying, so we do not agree. There were others who were straightforward. We never agreed to this. This is not something that we're going to be participating in. It's just not going to happen. And it began to appear that this understanding was going to fall apart. So I then said that what we should do is now that we have all laid our chips on the table, let each administration go back and talk and come back to me with their final position. Yes, we agree. No, we don't agree. We don't agree. And I was simply going to take both positions, circulate them to all the people who had been part of the process and say, this is where it stands. The Haruna administration sent me their response, but the Susan administration did not. Now, after that meeting, I did talk to the vice president of the Susan administration by phone and to the treasurer of the Susan administration by phone. And I explained to them what was on the table, just like I've explained right now. And both of them said, you know what, now that we understand, well, the treasurer had already agreed. The vice president said that now that I understand what's going on, I agree, this is what we should do. And then I said, okay, now that we have agreement from what appears to be a majority, let me call another meeting, a final meeting, that Saturday. But before that meeting took place, the very same day of the meeting, before it took place, we then had issued a statement from the Susan administration, signed by the vice president, issued by the secretary, saying something completely different. It is not so much that they referenced that there was a reconciliation process. It essentially said, well, this is what we are doing. And what was in that letter was in total contradiction to what we were going to discuss on Saturday. And so when we had that meeting, I said, look, we all know what was on the table. It appears that the Susan administration, and I'm trying to be diplomatic here, the Susan administration has made it very clear that they really don't want to be part of this process. I think I have done as much as I can. I'm going to issue my report, and then I'm going to step aside. I don't know if it's me, if it's a personal issue with me being on board, I have done as much as I can. But the Americans have the saying, you hit your head against the wall, but the wall won't move. I felt as if that is what I was doing. However, people kept calling me on the side, saying, Mr. Wilson, don't stop, keep trying. And I'll tell you, even as late as yesterday, the process of reconciliation was still underway, as late as yesterday. I was in a teleconference yesterday, people saying, why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? Let's reach out. So that is where we stand right now. Okay. I'm not going to say it is totally dead, but there are people outside in the community who have taken it upon themselves to see if they can negotiate something.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think you've heard it from the actual chairman of the Reconciliation Committee. The reason we are doing this today is because a report was circulated and not everyone is on social media. Some of you have been hearing about this from colleagues, but we wanted to bring the actual people on board, if you have time to listen in and get a clear understanding of actually what transpired and what can be done and where we think we can go from here. So before I move on to Mr. Elijah, just one quick question.
I have to make one comment.
Okay.
Only because it is absolutely essential. Mr. Elijah and I have exchanged, first of all, we have talked on the phone, I believe twice, in the last 10 weeks.
Okay.
We have exchanged emails. Even when the process of reconciliation appeared to be breaking down, we continued to exchange emails. So I don't want it to appear that Mr. Elijah did not, was left out of the picture. Okay. The communications continued. So I think it's important to know.
Okay. Yeah, and back to my question. Someone out there probably could want to know, because you've talked of two administrations, the Kwizera administration and the Haruna administration. Which one of those do you subscribe to?
To be honest, I do not subscribe to each one because I'm friends with both Haruna and Susan. And I talk to both at a very personal level.
Thank you very much.
I have attended functions. I have attended functions to which I have been invited by both.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, now we have to switch our attention to my elder here. Mr. Elijah, you've had it all from the chairman committee. You would probably have quite a lot you'd want to respond to, but as you respond, probably you also want to give us your background in terms of Okay, what you know about the two UCOC administration, the breaking up, just a little bit of it, and then you bring us back to responding to this actual process that was in place. What went wrong? What do you what went wrong before even we go to what do you think can be done? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. And I want to thank Mr. Wilson for his presentation, because not only because of the last statement he said, but people had a different perception that I wasn't involved with him in what was going on. I kept encouraging him. At one time he had actually written me, "I'm giving up." I said, "It happened to us, keep on." Even when they flopped, I told him, reconciliation is a process. It's not an event. This is just one phase of the stage. We need to move to the next one. We need to keep engaging. So I've been pushing on like that. Now to go back to the issue of what happened, Mr. Wilson has given us a good background. That's what I first heard about also from other sources, and think that is what is happening even today. That root cause of the problem of UCOC has never ended. From the time it started, it's still ongoing. It just has different characters coming in, but it's still ongoing.
So there's a root cause.
It's a root cause.
Okay.
Now, as he said, there was a problem. They had a leader who wanted to do things personally. Unfortunately, it happened again in 2018. The president then decided to team up and created a constitution which was not passed by his board. And neither were members passed it. That was the root cause. Elections were not held. So that the problem started from there. Members tried to call a meeting to talk to him. He refused. There was a first meeting in September 22, 2018. We said, no, let's petition the BOT. Now, who sits on the BOT? It was chaired by Mrs. Namkwana, assisted by Mrs. Samakula, and had Mr. David Kabakuru. So
BOT you mean?
Board of Trustees.
Good, okay.
Of UCOC. We petitioned them, and also petitioned the Electoral Commission, chaired by Bishop Kayong, telling them that, hey, there were two petitions we made. One to the BOT saying the executive has erred in what they have done. They had even appointed, then Mr. Chugwe went ahead and appointed a board, not elected, he appointed. So we said that cannot be. How do you appoint? We are the electorate. You cannot appoint. So we informed the BOT that this process is wrong, let it be notified, and we have elections. We were ignored. We also wrote to the Electoral Commission saying, conduct elections. We were ignored.
Who is we?
The members. We had a meeting, and we made those resolutions, and we were chosen. If you want, I have a file here, I can show you some of the things if you need to see them.
Okay.
And we were appointed as lead petitioners. I was one of the lead petitioners to write to the BOT requesting to step in and check these analyses. Also, we wrote to the chairman, Electoral Commission, on the same grounds, saying carry out elections. When that failed, in December, November, Mr. Chugwe went ahead and appointed a board. He said, now we are members of the organization, we are subscribing. This is appointment of the board under our constitution is by members, by vote, not by appointee.
You mean community members?
Community members,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
So we called 2 meetings for that. We discussed, we didn't get quorum. The third time we got the quorum, we resolved, voted on the resolutions, and they passed. The impeachment process was approved. Mr. Chugwe was impeached. Some people even abstained. I have the record. Some members abstained. Some members passed. The vote went ahead. And it happened. When he was impeached, we went ahead. The acting board was told to go ahead and conduct elections and form a reconciliation committee. So we went on. Mr. Chugwe went to court. He failed to subsist his case. It was dismissed. Then he came back. When it was dismissed, that's when his former board they're now in place, headed by the Vice President Florence Clay, Semanda, Alex Semwanga as the Secretary, Mr. Dennis Senyonjo as Treasurer, and the other board members, Mr. Paul Karunji and Miss Winnie Nabagirko or Nabalema, something like that. I've forgotten their names. So the board adopted those resolutions, carried out elections. Now this is where members have a mistake. Our constitution very clearly articulates or how appointment or how voting takes place. The voting day is always the last Saturday in June of the voting year. But it continues to say, or until a new board is elected and takes office immediately. So it gives room if there's a delay. If you don't meet the June deadline, you go ahead. But within, it can't go more than 3 months according to the California Corporation's Code of Operation. It can't go beyond 3 months. So they had a stipulation after the court case to go ahead and carry out the elections. There's nothing to stop them. They did that, that's how we came into office. And Mr. Haruna Kabuye participated in all these proceedings till the election day. He attended all the members' meetings, all the impeachment proceedings, the voting, everything. The record is here is very clear. He participated. When I was nominated as secretary, I was nominated unopposed. I went to him as a friend. He's the one, Mr. Haruna and Mr. Charles Omara, are the ones who introduced me to UCOC and Mr. Michael Pim. So I went to them. I said, hey, I've been elected unopposed. I'm nominated unopposed. How is this process? They said, okay, what you need to do, you have to get to know that you have to get the confidence of the people. You have to campaign and people vote for you. If you don't get a vote, then you have no confidence. Because that will be like a vote of no confidence, even if you are unopposed. That was Mr. Haruna. He helped me. He advised me. Even told me which people to contact. So I have never had a difference with him. It came to election day. Haruna could not vote. He was not a member in good standing. He had not paid the subscription fee. And he was asked to pay. He declined. He walked away. Next I heard, Haruna is now president of another UCSC that he was handed over by Mr. Chugoi. That is how this started. That's the genesis. I have the record here. If you want to check the record of everything that transpired, it's right here. Who voted, everything is black and white. It's very clear. Nothing can be, it's not in dispute. So that is the origin of these two groups, of the confusion. That's the origin. Now, I want to go back to reconciliation. Our first assignment when we entered office, we had our first board meeting in April 2019, and the first assignment we handled was the resolution of having a reconciliation committee in place. The board, led by our President Susan Kwizera, assigned me that duty. Said, this is you have the list of members in the community, communicate to them. Go to Haruna's side, communicate to them. I did that. And we had the board, we had that committee set. We had the Sheikh Masanso Ahmed. We had the pastor then, he was then Pastor Kayongo. I went to Pastor Robin Amais now. She advised me she's busy, she's traveling. She assigned me to her assistant pastors. So I went to Pastor Herbert Bagor. He was on board. We went to the community, we had Mrs. Prose Baranyonzi, something like that. Yeah, yes, she was there. We had Mr. Edmond Ntege. We had Ms. Prose Musoke, and others like that. And we had also Reverend Sam Magala and Reverend Joy Magala. So, in that process, we told them, this is your mandate. You sit, you elect your own chair. We don't appoint you. This is the what? If the other side accepts, the list was taken by Ms. Prose Musoke to Haruna, they said yes. We said, now you sit, you elect yourselves who's going to chair, and how you're going to proceed, that's your issue. But this is the issue. Find out from the committee, from the community, Ugandan community, what happened to reach at this stage. Get the root cause. Have hearings, invite people, take hearings, then recommendations you will make, send them to all stakeholders. We sit, then we have one joint meeting to implement those recommendations. Now, the Haruna side, Mrs. Professor Soki, I'm quoting her because I have the messages. She reported that Mr. Haruna said they have to report him, not anybody. So he wanted full control of the Reconciliation Committee, and members said that cannot be. So it stalled because of that. So unfortunately, COVID came in, we could not continue. So the good thing, in 2019, I got a message from Mr. Patrick Mwanga. Mr. Wilson had contacted him about this split, trying to see how people can reconcile. I think Mr. Patrick Mwanga referred him to me. We communicated with Mr. Wilson, and I said, I think we'll see how COVID is going. We come forward. But this is what had happened. If you could start from there and continue from there, it would be good. So before even Mr. Haruna came in, we had a communication in 2019 to that regard. So in 2020, I got communication from Mr. Wilson. Oh, this is happening. I said, that is good. We encourage it. Now, how is it going to start? Because we need to have neutral people, absolutely people not involved in the conflict, to be in the Reconciliation Committee. There should be, oh, I want my members to be there. No. I want my administration to be there. No. It should be the conflicting parties coming to the Reconciliation Committee to give their side of what happened. The Reconciliation Committee sees how to bring them together, try to pass on harmonizing solutions, then we meet again. So that was my communication between me and Mr. Wilson. Because I only attended one meeting, the one on Sunday. So another thing that came up was that I also told him, these ideas you have sent, because they sent me, so there's this position. I said, I have no problem with positions, but I am an elected person. I'm a servant of the people. My board has never sat. My board has never sat to resolve on this. We are talking to you as individuals. It is very dangerous for you to commit yourself to what we're telling you as individuals. We need to sit as a board and come out with a solution. But and I also told him, I'm going to invite you. We are having a quarterly meeting to discuss this. And I would like you to come and share your views to the members. That is my communication with Mr. Wilson. I said, our members are very eager to hear what you have to tell them. And it will be good if you come and engage them also directly. Some people didn't like it even from my committee. Some people liked it. So we went ahead and I had a board meeting on May 8th to discuss this. And we came to the solution saying, we need to send a team to Mr. Wilson. So we need to have members to come out, because we wrote to members, tried to engage them, they didn't respond. So we said we need to have the members meeting. That's why we called the quarterly meeting on 29th today at 4 p.m. via Zoom. That is what we wanted, to communicate to the members so that we get people to join the committee. We don't have a reconciliation committee. There's only Mr. Wilson. We have never given him members to work with, as he does. So to our side, we have never had reconciliation. We have been talking.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to take a short break, try and re-energize for a minute or two, and then we'll be back to continue with our discussion. I thank you and see you again in 2 minutes. Thank you.
It's a good warning here. This light here is
It's
generating heat.
people see me, that's why I told you, so the challenge you are going to have, you are talking about one-on-one. It's better, let me tell you, it's better meet the board first, if that is possible. One of the questions I asked you, I hope this is okay. Because these are international. You have what?
It's not frequent, but like in 3 minutes, because we have
I just want
20
to,
minutes.
I want Mr. Wilson to understand what happened. Because he was thrown, he's confused. We are agreeing with him when we come out, he's coming different. That's what happens when you and they are not, they don't come together. Because each member, when they are coming, we have members who call us. What's going on? We don't know what you're saying. You're seeing Haruna publishing. Haruna has been sending out these letters. I've appointed this. I have done this. Nobody has ever complained about it. So now members complain. What's happening? So now Haruna is saying something. So we told them, no, some of these things we need to do. Because it's better than that. They are not aware. No member of the community is aware what transpired. Mr. Wilson is one. So our work is to make it public to members. That's why we call it totally free. That's what I'm discussing. This thing is better. You are more comfortable if our people get aware of what's happening, and so that we can move forward. Because we tried it once. The other side said we are controlling. We sent out messages for members to join this committee. We haven't received those. So after the meeting, we're going to also do the same.
Okay, yes, before we get back on air, we just need to know what's the way forward. Because it's more like you want to host the meeting. They want to host the meeting. Now you your team, what have you said that in your meeting, what do you want?
We said we are going to open to the discussion. We are moving towards. And we have even said we are pointing people to go on that field. We are tasking people to go down.
No. I'm just giving you that.
Oh, what you asking me?
No, like together to share meeting your way. Doing a sound. Okay.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from that short break. As you heard from the first discussion, it's basically we are trying to understand the reconciliation process that went on, what really happened, what failed, and what should be the way forward. With me on the show today, we have Mr. Elijah Rokidimpuga, who is an elder and a leader in this community. And on the other side, on my left-hand side, I have Mr. Moses Wilson, who happened to be the chairman of a reconciliation committee that I'm right now getting to know that actually, from what Elijah is saying, there wasn't a reconciliation committee. So I would want to get back to Mr. Elijah. To Mr. Moses Wilson. You've heard what Mike, our colleague on this side, has been saying about how he has seen the process. In a minute, in the interest of time, what do you have to respond about it? But in particular, did we have a reconciliation committee? Because I also had a question, because I had planned on asking you what was the methodology of picking this reconciliation committee. Because when I was reading on the different social media sites, what came to my mind was like probably one of the challenges that your process faced was the selection of the committee, which I'm now knowing there was no committee. Over to you, sir.
You're quite right. There was no committee. As I said earlier, a list was sent to me of 9 people with my name on it, and I was to be the chairman. And I declined to be on that committee by Mr. Haruna. Send me a list. I declined to be on that committee. I sent him a message. I said I cannot be a part of this. And he asked to meet face to face. And I explained to him, if a committee is created by either side, it would not be accepted by the other side. It is simple. And so I told Haruna, let me now approach Susan one-on-one, and let's see if we can reach some state of understanding and it will slowly expand the process. It is not a reconciliation committee. These are reconciliation discussions that I am chairing. Reconciliation discussions. We start with the two presidents, and if the two presidents get to a point where it appears they agree, then we expand it to their boards. You see, Haruna, you will be responsible to go back to your vice president, secretary, treasurer, your board. Susan, you go back to your board and tell them what we have described. And that was what, now, I was working with a group that I will call community leaders. These are the heads of all the major churches, the head of the Muslim community, the head of the Catholic community, plus both Haruna and his, and I think Haruna and his vice president, and Susan, and I had invited Susan to bring somebody else from her board, and she had nominated the treasurer. So this was a group that we had worked on already. It wasn't the reconciliation committee. This was a committee that we had put together to address COVID needs in our community.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Wilson, I would want to interject you.
Yes.
Just to have a quote in one of the reports that you wrote.
Yes.
A specific paragraph here says, that Saturday I called a meeting of the reconciliation group
Yes.
to update them on the progress of the negotiations and solicited their advice on the next steps.
Exactly. And that comprised of all the people I just described, the leaders of all the churches in this community, the head of the Muslim community, the head of the Catholic community, plus Susan and Brian, Haruna and Elizabeth. That's it.
So in your report you called it a reconciliation group, but
Group at
not,
that point.
it wasn't
It was not a
reconciliation.
committee. It was not a committee because this was a group that I had started the discussions with already.
Okay.
Okay, and they each represented the majority constituents of this community. And so I called the meeting and I said, this is what I have so far. As a group, what should I now do? And they said, okay, bring the two sides together in the next meeting. So that was one weekend. The following weekend, I called another meeting. I sent invitations to each of the leaders of each administration. I sent it to Haruna, Haruna's vice president, secretary and treasurer, and I sent a direct message to Susan, Susan's vice president, treasurer, and secretary. And I said, we have this meeting. And I sent a message to the group that I told you about, the reconciliation group, not committee. And that was my distribution. But when the meeting came, now we had Mr. Patrick Mwanga. Well, Mr. Patrick Mwanga had called me earlier. Was very adamant that this was a bad idea altogether. But when the meeting came, Mr. Patrick Mwanga was there, Mr. David Kabukuru was there, other people who I had not invited were on there. So obviously each side had now invited their supporters to come and voice opinions at this meeting. And so that was the second meeting.
Okay. Do you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to correct him. Mr. Wilson, actually, we did not invite anybody. We came by your invitation. According to me, actually, I did, but
I'll be honest.
I came to the meeting not knowing who was in the meeting.
So who invited you to the meeting?
Mr. Wilson.
I did. I invited him personally.
Okay.
But there are people who I did not invite.
Okay, but were part of
But
the
we're
meeting.
there.
Okay. I know this is not really something very simple to break down for you listeners and viewers out there, but we'll try as much as possible to try and make it easier for everyone to understand. Moving forward, Mr. Elijah, what do you think should be done? Like, we need to move forward as a community. Majority of us think we need one administration to take us forward. I know you belong to the Kwizera administration. I don't know whether, as you're seated here, you're speaking for that administration or you're speaking for yourself, but whichever. What do you think should be done? Like, how can we best move forward out of this hole where we are seated in?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm speaking on behalf of the board because last night I was with the president. She's back from Uganda. We talked. This morning I was speaking with the treasurer, Mr. Brian Minga. We talked. Yesterday we had also the vice president in a meeting. So on the entire board of directors, we talked about this. They said, okay, go ahead. You have the record, you know the position. So I'm here on behalf of ECRC.
Okay.
So
So,
the president herself, one day she will come also and explain what is coming up. But that's why we call this meeting today, the quarterly meeting today, which we're having at 4 on Zoom today, is to iron out these things, to tell the members, our committee, our UCU members, what's going on, what we need to do, things like that. Because we even told Mr. Wilson that we need to engage, involve the members themselves. Because not everybody, it's not easy to have everybody on board. That's one thing you should understand. We have different views, different perspectives. But everyone wants a unified what?
community, yeah.
But how we're going to arrive at that is by simply having neutral people as the Constitution Committee, as we told Mr. Wilson. We have no problem Mr. Wilson chairing the committee. I even told him, I've never had a problem. What we need is to give him a team that's neutral. But when I went in the meeting, all I found was the perpetrators of the conflict. And I said, oh, is this mediation? How are we going to handle this? That's what first came into my mind. Because I was a bit stuck. I didn't know what to say. Because I looked, I said, no. The only person who was missing, actually, was Mr. Chigwe. That's when as I got reserved, I said, if Mr. Chigwe is not in these proceedings, we are not safe. Because he's the key person who started the conflict.
Okay.
So if you do anything outside here,
Yeah.
I think that is wrong.
Okay. I wouldn't want us to because much of what you could be saying now, we've talked about it. So, in a nutshell, we need to have a neutral reconciliation committee. Mr. Moses Wilson, how can we have a neutral reconciliation committee?
We have a challenge.
Yes.
Elections in 3 weeks.
That's where I was going.
Once we now go back to, you see, this process of creating election committee, we have gone back and forth for the last 10 weeks. You see, because I sent messages to Susan with the expectation that Susan would share them with her board, saying this process needs people from your side. And Susan never answered me once. You see, so it's not a matter of there was no attempt to make this neutral, but when one side gives you 10 names and the other side gives you none, it's difficult to start talking about we're going to have a reconciliation process, an electoral process, or any process if you're not getting that feedback from the other side. But let me jump forward and tell you where we are right now. We are where we have been before. We have one group that has a very large constituency, and we have another group that also has a large constituency. Both of whom are saying we would prefer to have one. But if we cannot have one, we are prepared to go our separate ways. That is the feeling that I am getting. Both groups have said we have reconciliation on our terms, which at that point is not reconciliation. If there's no compromise, then what we are dealing with right now is what we have dealt with before. Remember, UCC is the result of the split of the former association. We are back to where we were. Now, what can happen? Before, and I'm going to come up with very, very real recommendations, but I need to make this clear. The Susan group does not recognize or trust the Haruna administration. It's important to say that. The Haruna administration does not recognize or trust the Susan administration. They don't trust each other. This is like the Israeli government and the Palestinian government. They just don't trust each other. And I'll be even more specific, because I have taken recommendations or proposals or suggestions or conditions given to me by the Susan administration and taken them to the Haruna administration and said, look, this is what they are saying. And the Haruna administration is saying, look, Mr. Wilson, let us look at the history of some of our communities. We do not trust that if registration of members takes place under the Susan administration, that the voter register will be correct. It is our belief that whoever is in charge of the registration process on the Susan administration will pick and choose the people they want to vote and stack them against us. It is our belief. Okay? It's a direct accusation. I am not telling you. And they're saying because of that, we disagree. We will not participate in a member registration process that is handled by another side who we believe is now going to stack the voter registration against us. On top of that, we have no records of the financials of the organization. And this is from, it has happened to multiple administrations. You get a president who hands over a zero balance account. We don't know if we're going to get a zero balance account. We don't know. We don't want the money from our registrants to go into that pot where we won't know what's happening to it. I'm just telling you what I was told yesterday. And because of that, we do not want the money from our registrants to go into Susan's bank account. What we are prepared to do is to have this entire registration process handled by a completely neutral party. A party that not selected by us. A neutral party. A party that has been put together by both the Susan group and the Haruna group, and we all agree, and let them go. But the money cannot go to the Susan group. The money has to go to whoever is ultimately elected. So we find a way to do that. Now, let me give credit to Mr. Michael Mpima. Let me also give credit to Mr. Edison Sekayombia and a few others who have called me with recommendations. As late as yesterday, they were coming up with suggestions, coming up with suggestions, coming up with suggestions. What if both groups could agree on an individual or two individuals they both trust? And Mr. Dennis, somebody help me with the name. He was the treasurer previously.
Senyonjo.
Mr. Dennis Senyonjo's name comes up as somebody who is trusted in this community. Is there any way something can be put in place where monies go to Mr. Dennis Senyonjo as one person who has been recommended by one side and somebody from the Susan side? So the two of them are now responsible for the money. Now, what is happening here, now, believe me, I'm giving you somebody else's recommendation. Please, I'm not going to take credit for this. Okay? I'm just telling you what these other people are now recommending. If the electoral process, if the electoral commission can be created with people from both sides, the proposal being the Haruna side recommends 7 people, the Susan side recommends 7 people, each side will have the right to eliminate 2 people from the other side without having to give a reason. That way it's not personal. That will leave 5 people on one side, 5 people on the other side, 10, and both people agree, and both sides agree. That's electoral commission. Now, the electoral again, I'm not going to take credit for this. The process of registration will be handled by that neutral electoral commission. And the voter register will be developed by that same committee. Okay. It is in keeping with some of what I have recommended or I have negotiated between the two parties in the past. But that is where it stood as of 10 o'clock last night. So that is where it is. Thank you.
Okay, Elijah, you want to respond to that?
Thank you very much. You see, some of these proposals are actually out of context because there's no constitution in that provision. You see, we have to be honest. We have a system of registration which is online, just like you now. You go and register. We present the register, it is open. It is not a hidden factor. The Haruna companies are saying they don't trust, they want financial. We have had financial statements each quarterly meeting. We have had financial statements coming out. Even today, we're having another one. So nobody has ever asked. Listen, I want members to understand this. There's nothing hidden. Any member has a right to write asking to check the record. Members register and financial record. That's a right of members. An outsider to come in to ask for this may not be easy, but every member of an organization has that right. For somebody to say they don't trust, they have never seen any record, nobody has ever asked for it. Because members know every quarterly meeting we issue financial statements. Just like even today, one is coming out by the treasurer. So that's just a childish thing, I would say. Another thing, the registry, it is very clear how it is kept. We cannot come and have two people creating lists. This is a UCC organization. We have one register. We go to one register, make it public, and hand it over to the electoral commission that shall be appointed.
Okay.
That's the first thing we had agreed with the Haruna group. And the first letter Mr. Wilson put out.
Okay.
Within 1 hour, it had changed. That's why we said this is not reconciliation. There's no committee. We need to have a reconciliation committee.
Okay, so
Because within 1 hour of reaching a position, it was changed.
okay.
So that's the challenge. I want us to continue because I want to make out a point which is very clear.
Okay,
Registration is streamlined. An organization which is duly registered and legal, joining it, you follow the system. The record is public. There's nothing hidden.
Okay.
So somebody say, I'm hiding. Or hiding what? What is hiding? You come and say, I want this record. You get it.
Yeah, so those are basically allegations, and who he or she who alleges must prove. So we wouldn't want to dwell much on that. But the two teams are talking about registration and nominating leaders for offices. Is there where we can pause these things, not until we put a reconciliation committee in place and work is done?
I read you a section of the Constitution
Okay.
about elections. The due date is the last Saturday of June, or until a new board is put in place and immediately takes off. So it is the members who decide, can we wait or can we vote? It's not the board. We put it to the members. Hey, we have this issue. That's why we call the quarterly meeting. And that's what I've been exchanging with Mr. Wilson. I said, just come into the quarterly meeting, we share this thing, and we get a resolution.
Okay. So you administer in total members. How many members do you have?
We have over 140 members.
140.
That is by last time, but during elections, we had 250 members. I'm saying those who have renewed their membership.
Okay. You've talked about a constitution. Do these two, because I know the Haruna side they also have a constitution. Are these two constitutions the same, or they're totally two different constitutions? Do they speak the same language, or edit?
When this conflict started all along, because there was an amendment of the constitution which was in process, which was not complete. So one group is handling an incomplete process of amendment, while we are following the actual constitution, which Mr. Chigoi himself, his cabinet, presented to IRS and the Secretary of State to obtain tax exemption. That's the constitution we're following. That's the registered constitution. There's no other constitution that we have.
Okay. Point noted. I'm coming back to you. We have, I think, 30 more minutes to close this up. Mr. Moses Wilson, if I'm a member of one of the administrations, or if I'm the president, or the treasurer, or the secretary, what do I benefit being? Someone would want to know, because probably there is something even hidden. Is the government in Uganda funding these administrations that people are sharing money, people get salaries? It's a question. Someone out there is asking.
It's an important question too.
Can we get to understand that?
All right.
Yes.
Let
They
me-
probably also
Let
respond
me
to it.
address it on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
There's this organization called UNA. I'm a past president, which is UCOC on a national scale. Okay. Now, UNA directly receives $50,000 a year towards its operations from the Uganda government. The administration of the leadership of UNA has to walk a very fine line between receiving money from the Uganda government and separating the money from the NRM movement. To many, the Uganda government and the NRM are one and the same.
Yeah.
The challenge is, to any UNA president, is if you align yourself with, let's say, the NRM movement, and tomorrow we have now FDC in power. Now, UNA has become a political extension of the NRM government. So I faced that as the UNA president. When I went to Uganda, I was invited to go and meet President Museveni. And I said, I can't do that. As UNA president, I can't have a photograph of me and the president together. I'm sorry. I will meet with the speaker. I will meet with the vice president. I'll meet with everybody else in their offices, unofficially, as representatives of the government. But we can't do that. However, people can't make that difference. And you know what? I don't blame them. So the Uganda government, and I'm telling you right now, the Uganda government gave the UNA $50,000, not $100,000. However, the government sets aside another $50,000 controlled by the embassy to give to organizations. And the embassy has said, we don't have the time to figure out who deserves to get this money. So UNA, you tell us who should we send a check to? And that is, as I'm sure all of you have read, is in the purview of the vice president to decide how that happens. UCOC can solicit money. UCOC can solicit money from UNA. How much? $1,000, $5,000. There are organizations in Boston that have received $5,000 in the past at the recommendation of UNA. I do not know if UC officially has ever done this or received any money. That said, the process we put in place to help the community through COVID, we solicited UNA and received $1,000 from UNA to help COVID, which we distributed to the community. That money came in through one of the churches that was on the board. It did not come through UCOC, and we were very specific about that. Now, is UCOC a beneficiary of money from the Uganda government? The answer is no. Okay. And I think you also have to understand, and I don't want this to be taken in the wrong way. UC is small within the context of what the Uganda government wants to achieve in the United States. If they go to every community and try to do that, the politics makes no sense. They'd much rather see what they can do in UNA. And even then, they're not taking over UNA. It's important to know they have not taken over UNA. But yes, they do have influence. So the answer to your question, no.
Okay.
They don't.
Yeah, Mr. Elijah, how much is your sitting allowance as the treasurer for?
We do voluntary work. We receive no payment. Even the office we hold, we contribute rent. When COVID came up, I even told the treasurer how we're going to manage, because some of us are out of work until COVID is over. He said he will try to use his funds to keep the office afloat. And I told him, now we are back, COVID is over, can you send us a bill and we resume? That's how we operate.
So you're volunteering?
We volunteer.
So my next question, do you think your colleagues in the other administration are being paid?
No.
No, they also volunteer?
Which one? Which side?
The Haruna one?
I don't know. I don't know.
You don't? Oh, okay. Okay. I think it's, ladies and gentlemen, the discussion is very fruitful and everything is going on well. The gentlemen are both very knowledgeable on the subject matter. But now moving forward as we try to close this up.
I'd want to say something about politics in UCOC.
Okay, in 1 minute, just give us that, yes.
Now, on the issue of politics, UCOC board agreed that we shall not engage or support any or affiliate ourselves to any political party. Each board member has his or her own political party, separate and distinct from each other. So we don't belong in the same political party, and we are different. But we have never, and we made our platform saying any person during elections can post whatever they want, but not using derogatory language and abusive language. That's what we said, and that's what we have done. Now, on the issue of soliciting funds from UNA, our predecessors did that, and we inherited the 5,000, which we used and accounted for. And recently of COVID, we wrote to the UNA president requesting for the money for COVID, but saying they should give it to the committee headed by Mr. Wilson, because there's already a committee doing that. We don't want another parallel organization handling it. That was in our letter, and she communicated to us that we have done as you have requested. Thank you very
Okay, thank you, Mr. Elijah. Okay, yeah, moving forward, Mr. Elijah, I now what I want to hear now is critical and very thought out recommendation. Like we need to get out of this. What it probably you've hinted on this, but we need to say it again. Like, is it the reconciliation committee that we need in place? You talked about 5 people from this side, 5, I think, say 15, then remove the, I don't know, I remember.
Yeah.
But someone out there might again want to say probably that is again not neutral. Is it possible to get people from outside our actual community? Because I think he hinted about it. Then call each group to give their views on table. Then again picking, I don't know, yes.
I honestly believe that both groups are entrenched. After 10 weeks, 12 weeks of negotiations, each has drawn a line in the sand, and unfortunately, we who are the community, who both claim to represent, are the ones who are left holding the bag. When I say holding the bag, this line in the sand does not represent the interests of the community. But the lines have been drawn. And even after I issued my letter saying that literally I have tried and given up, the process has continued, and those lines have not changed, have not moved. Until both sides are prepared to cross the line, I don't think this process will succeed. I don't want to preach gloom and doom. I really don't. But at this particular point, I honestly, if compromise cannot be reached, if both sides are not willing to give more than they've given so far, we will end up with 2 organizations.
Yes, your take. Moving forward, what exactly do you think should be done?
I have a different opinion to
Okay,
that.
okay.
You see, reconciliation is a process. It's not an event. If you focus on an event, you can never reconcile. I handle international arbitration. I reconcile governments. I'm one of the people who advised the reconciliation committee between Palestine and Israel.
Wow.
I told them, set Egypt, a neutral party, because Egypt is closer to Israel, is closer to Palestine. And it happened. That was my recommendation. I work with the United Nations, so I know what reconciliation is. It is a process. It's not something you're going to jump on today we finish. No. You hear what somebody is saying, you say, okay, go and think, come back. If you set a deadline on reconciliation before even parties agree on anything, that's a problem. That's why I said we need a reconciliation committee. Not the conflicting parties start saying, this is the position, this is the position. Are we negotiating seat sharing? What are we negotiating? We are discussing resolving the root cause of everything and have one community. It's not going to start one day and end one day. It is a process which we have all to agree. How do we agree? Having a neutral involved.
Okay.
You see?
Thank you very much.
Having a neutral involved.
Yeah.
That's what we are doing. Because after our quarterly meeting today, members are going to tell us, oh, we have so and so, we have so and so, why try this, try this. Even at the board had even considered getting external people, as you had said. We already started looking into from union boards, from other committees. Do you have people who can come in? We had started that. So it's not that one day thing, because we earlier on, our board started the reconciliation committee by the resolution of November 2018. It flopped. When the other side said they have to report to us, we said that's an egoism. Reconciliation is headed by neutral persons.
Okay.
If you're not neutral, you cannot reconcile anybody. First of all, you have to be neutral.
Quick
But
question.
appointment on the committees have to be accepted by both sides.
That's it.
So if somebody says, I want that one, that doesn't mean the person is not neutral. It's that the other party is comfortable in that person. That's all.
Quick question. Do you think Mr. Moses Wilson here is neutral, being chairman of that reconciliation?
I have never objected to that. He has it in my messages. And I've been telling him, one day is here. He wrote to me, I'm giving up.
Okay.
Before even I entered in the meeting, what is coming up, I'm giving up, I'm surrendering. Tell Mr. Wilson, relax.
Okay.
This is just the beginning. You're just testing the waters. That's our community. I told you.
Now,
It was just beginning. Hold on.
I would want to pick your minds on this now. I've just thought about it, Mr. Moses Wilson. What disadvantages do you see in our community continuing with two administrations? What disadvantages are in that, or what advantages are in that?
Oh, there are disadvantages, by the way.
So do we have disadvantages and advantages in that?
It is not desirable. It is not desirable, but let us also recognize.
But it could be ideal.
Well, no, no.
With the situation around
Let
now.
us recognize this. 25 years ago, there was only one Ugandan church in this community. Today there are 5. And you had that one community that split into 2. And then that second community church also split into 2. And it's the process, you see. So we have to put it in that context to some degree. You find one church that has a constituency, but if something happens in the other church, the members of that community may choose not to go and participate in that event, or they may not even hear about it. So it is not desirable to have 2 organizations. But let's also recognize that within the church context, the way one group handles its prayers, the way it handles, the way the church is run, may not be agreeable to the next church. You've got Pentecostals who have a very strong opinion as opposed to, let's say, the Episcopals. And they're very different. So it might be different in that case. There's a possibility, it is undesirable, but there's a possibility that the 2 communities cannot reconcile. Because they are very strong, you've got very strong leadership in both. And what one set of leadership wants to do, what constituency wants to do, might be very different from what the other one wants to do. And let's also recognize that we have generational differences now. Things that I might find important that I think UCOC should do will be very different from what many members of our community now think UCOC should do. So, undesirable, but to a large degree, I'm thinking we've got to a point where it's now unavoidable.
Okay. Your take. Advantages and disadvantages of us continuing with.
Disadvantages are, one, if any donor comes in or any party wants to work with us for development of our community, we find it a problem of who to deal with. They first will have to go to investigate. We are the register. They will look at us. But one thing many donors prefer is unity. I'll give you a good example in the COVID. I advised the Mayor's Committee and the Governor Newsom's Committee on community participation. I developed a paper whereby they should reach out to the minorities. But they've been asking me an issue. Where is the Ugandans? I said, oh, there's a COVID team which was set up. But unfortunately, by the time it was set up, things were winding up. We have development funds available for everybody. We started a business fellowship. We invited both sides to come. I remember one of the teams from Mr. Aruna, they came, the 2 of them, 3 members came, they attended. Though the participation was stopped because of COVID, because we were supposed to undergo trainings by the government, whereby you can access contracts, you can access funds for those who are doing business, minority. But if we are divided like this, how many letters of applications are they going to look into? Because you think what we are going to get our side, you think the Aruna people don't want it? It will exclude them automatically. Because they want a list. That's why you see when I'm saying registration is going to be uniform, not another party. This is what I'm talking about. Every list of members we get, every our annual returns, we file it. It's not done by anybody. Even now, after this exercise, when we finish registration, we are sending the names. Why? We have a target there. We have pending programs there. Whoever comes in, we'll take them over. But they want to know the number. They want to know the people. So if somebody says, I don't want you cannot handle registration of an organization. It must be uniform. But it has to be made public. For example, if we have registers, we say this is the list of voters registered. This is our list we have as members. Electoral Commission, you're independent. Here's the list of members we have. Formulate your voters register out of this. Then they will publish names. Oh, this is the list we have obtained. Now people will come and say, why is it my name there? But you cannot start making an allegation when you even don't know the process. We saw it in the elections of 2019. Our predecessors gave us what to do. Then Sonia set up a system where membership is paid online. We have advanced it. You don't need to meet anybody to pay membership. You pay, the process begins. If you're not a member, it will tell you register as a member. Because your money will stay pending till you have registered. You completed the registration process. That's all. So if you refuse that, then we don't know how it's going to work.
Okay.
But
Moving
all
on.
in all, conclude.
Yeah.
All in all, this is just a beginning. When people are open to reconciliation, that's a good fact. We just need now to step up by saying, hey, can we have a reconciliation committee? That's what is needed.
Okay.
So that the conflicting parties step aside. The reconciliation committee does its work, and then they issue recommendations, and then we see the way, what next.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Elijah. Yeah, we have 10 more minutes. As we wind up, I've been here, I think, close to 3 years now, if I'm not mistaken. And I happen to be, there is WhatsApp, there are 2 WhatsApp groups. One is the Haruna, and then one is the Kwizera. I found my number in both. Now, truth be told, because I'm using myself as an example. Now, truth be told, I know both. I've met Kwizera of late, and then I know Mr. Haruna. I'm in both groups. I'm still new, very young. Now, this could be my question. You're talking of registering members. This side is registering, you're neutral. The other side is registering. I think I'll start with you because you belong to one of these. What do I benefit? Because I'm just in a WhatsApp group. I'm not yet a member of any. But then whatever I'm saying, I'm speaking for some, because there are quite a number, many who are not yet registered that are out there. What would be the, I'm trying to understand, of what interest? Why would I be interested? What would I benefit from registering and being part of you? What would pull me? Yes.
Thank you very much. First and foremost is what we call the life insurance. We found it there, we inherited it. It was started by Mr. Chigoye regime, and it is still ongoing. And what we need to do is to step it up from being death benefits for burial and to be actual life insurance. We're working through those modalities, we have them set. We've been working behind the scenes, doing things, talking to our insurer. We really need to develop it into a bigger package with the same minimum cost. So that instead of just being burial, it comes life.
So one of them is life insurance.
Because this only covers burial. They just give you the cost for burial, repatriation, or burial, things like that. But after that, what next?
Okay.
So the question we always ask, after that, what next? What happens? Your family, boop, is left like that.
So one of the benefits is life insurance.
Yes.
And 2?
2 is also benefits. For example, I was telling you about if you have a business community, how to benefit getting the contracts from government, funding from governments. They give it to communities. We are already registered for that, and we've been pushing. Now, what we want to know, who is who?
Okay.
Because we want to know how many people do you have in this location? How many people do you have this? Because they have locations where they have those fundings, what they call hub zones, or where they call contract zones.
Okay.
The
3?
government has zones. So if you have, for example, a number in San Diego, we say, okay, we have 50 people in San Diego, or 100 people in San Diego. This is who they are. These, we have technicians, we have this, we have this. They say, okay, we have a contract there. Take it.
3?
Those are the kind of things. Then there's funding, if you're doing business. Also issues of migration. Because if you're a community, and you have a migration issue, and the community comes up for you, it saves you.
Okay.
It saves you.
Okay.
Another example which they are blaming us when they say this about finances is we had an issue whereby one community member who had just come in made a mistake. We don't know what he did, but he was arrested. So we stood surety for him and had him make an agreement to pay the money back.
Okay.
Because we looked at many issues. To let him go, he's going to go in prison. Next, it will be deportation. Is that what brought us here? See your friend, your fellow Ugandan being deported when you can help?
Okay.
We have contributed bail money for many people who have done things like in fraud and what. We have contributed money. So saving one person, why is it not a crime?
Okay.
That's why they are trying to label us. But in the community, we have had issues. Also, somebody, I'm going to be open. We have had cases of insurance fraud. People we have contributed to those to be bailed out. Why isn't it being said that is bad? Why did you contribute? So when we come to save a Ugandan, we send shelter for him. He pays back, and things are settled. Why is it a crime?
Okay.
So I don't like double standards. Hypocrisy is what is killing us. We don't want to be truthful.
Okay.
Because we are not showing off that what we are doing this, no. We are quiet people, we work according to our means.
Okay. Yeah, I know you do not belong to any,
I
but
don't
you
belong to
could
either one.
you could
I-
have some.
I-
You could tell probably you've had something in the Aruna administration that could benefit me if I become a member of that administration.
You see, this is where the concept of being neutral becomes challenging, and why I have multiple times have said I really want to withdraw because I might see that one side has an argument that might be stronger than the other side, but I cannot espouse that argument, and it becomes easier for me to say, let me step aside. But let me talk about what this particular organization means to the community, and put it in context of other community organizations. What is it that you, having come 3 years ago, look for? First of all, do not say I want this for free, because that is what a lot of people say. We have people here who are saying UNA is bad because UNA has not provided masks, has not provided this, has not provided. There are 100,000 Ugandans in North America. And the people who are saying that are not even members of UNA. You see? So there is a total misunderstanding of the purpose of the association. It is not a matter of them saying, only when I need should now UNA stand up and do for me. That is not how it happens. And that's an issue. So what is it that community members want? What is it that community members need? When I put together the committee for COVID, it was looking ahead. We are going to, back then we thought everybody was going to have COVID. We need to be prepared. Fine. That is one example. The community is going to need help. We had issues. With that committee, we provided food. We went out there, we got donations, we found a place, people came and took food who needed it. There were people who couldn't. People couldn't pay their bills. We sent them money to pay electricity. So, looking into that, you bring it closer and say, what is it that our community needs? We have grown. We're a big community now, okay? UCOC has to be involved, has to be interested in the day-to-day, to some degree, in the day-to-day needs of its constituents. And to some degree, maybe it's a matter of guessing at what that is. But when one side says, okay, we're going to feed you, and that's so, that is something that they're doing. Okay. Rightly or wrongly, they've done that. Okay. If one side says we're going to put together forums on how to start a business, on how to do this, that's all part of what I believe the community leadership should do for the community. And a lot of others, but I'll end there.
Okay. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of our broadcast today. And as we end this, I'll want to give, I think, a minute to each one of my guests to tell us, as we end this discussion, your parting shot, like 1 minute, and then I'll have 1 minute for him.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I want first to thank the proprietors of Quest and its staff, TV. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Leo, I think I remember first business fellowship. Ms. Annette joined us. These are things we discussed, and we're happy to see that she's moving on. And I think she needs promotion from all corners of Ugandans.
Okay.
I mean, all of you need promotions, because I don't know the proprietorship. So I'm sorry to say that. I only met her when she was telling me about this.
Okay.
So, all in all, let's meet today at 4 p.m. by Zoom. The link is out. Let's discuss further on this. You're all invited, including Mr. Wilson.
Okay.
We promised we want to hear what we say, what the community is going to say. Let's meet and discuss this further. As I said, reconciliation is a process. It's not an event. Let's not look at events. Let's look at the process. How far can we go? How long is it going to take us is not an issue. The issue is how far we're going, how far we're coming together. Thank you very much. See you today at 4 p.m.
Okay.
God bless you.
Mr. Moses Wilson, in 1 minute.
Let me also add my appreciation for this invitation. I think there are a lot of things that have been said here that are important. That it has been a very neutral environment, shall we say, for opinions to be said by Mr. Rukidi here, and for me to sort of walk the fine line, and I have to admit and really emphasize that I'm not representing the Haruna side. I'm just trying to be in the middle. I do not. It is not so much that I want this community. I don't want you to get the impression that I'm promoting for a division in this community. I really don't. I don't think that is the way to go. I have seen it. I see it today. And I hope that the fine line I talked about can be crossed so that we do end up with one UCOC. I think we accomplish more that way. However, when we have a Zoom meeting called by that one side and they preach to their followers, and we have a Zoom meeting called by the other side and they preach to their followers, there is no way we're going to have compromise. Because if you call the meeting, your people will show up, the other side will not. We saw that once before. I have every reason to think it will happen today. This is the sort of thing, see, Mr. Rukidi talked about the reconciliation process between the Israelis and the Palestinians. If you remember back when Jimmy Carter brought the leader of Israel and the leader of Palestine together, my father was part of that process and was in Washington that day when they did that. When the Uganda government was negotiating, when the NRM was still a rebel group and was negotiating with the Uganda government, my father was in the middle of it. So I have seen how negotiation works. It is not done in the media, it is not done publicly, it is done in somebody's living room. And they agree on things, and then they go back to the other side. And you agree on things. It's a process, an iterative process. Right now, let's be honest, both sides have no incentive or desire to really make this work, in my opinion. But, as I said, even up until 10 o'clock last night, those of us who are outside were still trying, and we shall continue to try. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've come to the end of this broadcast. Allow me to thank my guests today for sparing your time to come and discuss a very important key issue in our community. Thank you very much, Mr. Elijah. Thank you very much, Mr. Moses Wilson. And to our viewers and listeners out there, thank you for your time. Please keep online, go on our different social media sites if you've not been able to watch us online. The link is going to be up there, and then you can always follow. Never shift, you have an opportunity to sit and watch, and then if you have recommendations, you can always send us a message. To my team that I work with, the producer, the cameraman, the engineer, and everyone, the tea lady, okay, thank you very much. You're making this show a wonderful one. Until next time, we sign out. Thank you.